Hello, everyone. My name is Stephen Seidel. I'm with Habitat for Humanity International. Just doing a sound check to see if I am audible to those of you who are participating in this session. If someone can give me a thumbs up or an indication that you can hear me, that would be great. Thank you, Kirsten. Appreciate it. We're at our start time of 11 o'clock here in Cairo, 11 o'clock in the morning. Whatever time it is for you, wherever you are calling in, joining in, we really appreciate you being part of this conversation. We're really delighted to have this conversation here as part of the Middle East North Africa Housing Forum that's taking place here in Cairo and virtually this week. We're on the final day of our program and delighted to be able to have this session as part of the conversation that we're having with folks who, especially the folks who are on this call or part of this session attending virtually. If you're attending virtually, it probably means you weren't able to join us here in person in Cairo. So we really appreciate you taking the time to participate in this particular session. I'm gonna launch in, and although I am looking for one other presenter, I'm wondering if Monica Glimsner has been able to join us. I'm not sure I see Monica among our lineup here. So, and I'm wondering, Kirsten or Salma, good to see you both. Do you see Monica as part of our lineup here today?
Yes, she is. She's just answering to my follow-up message.
All right, perfect.
She has challenges getting in. I had also the same challenge. Yeah, let me try to help. Thank you.
Okay. So as Kirsten and Monica are working on those issues, I want to give a little bit of a background on our session. And again, thank you all for joining us. This is, I think, a very special session. It's very timely because just a few weeks ago, the team from UN Habitat and the government of South Africa convened a substantial gathering in Pretoria to launch the global action plan for implementing initiatives toward addressing and improving conditions in slums and settlements around the world. It has become a major, and it's always been a major component of UN Habitat and for many other organizations, a top priority. But just in the last few months, since the World Urban Forum in June in Katowice, and in the months since then, and especially last month in Pretoria with the launch event, the Global Action Plan on slums and settlements is really designed to marshal a tremendous amount of momentum and capacity to really make substantial progress on conditions in slums and settlements. So we're delighted to have this conversation today, delighted to have the presenters that we have to talk about it, to share this information with all of you who are joining today. And our hope is that by the end of our hour, this is just a 60-minute session, that all of you participating and listening in will have some concrete ideas about how to participate and support and contribute to the achievement of the ambitious goals of this action plan. So we've got several presenters that'll be sharing information with us. I mentioned Monica Glimsler. She's the Director of International Relations in the Department of Human Settlements with the government of South Africa. Monica will be followed by Kirsten Zomer, who's the Program Manager of the Participatory Slum Upgrading Program at UN Habitat. And then providing a regional perspective here from the Middle East is Salma Yousri. Salma is the Urban Development Program Manager with here in Egypt as part of UN Habitat as well. So we'll spend probably half an hour or so going through these prepared remarks. And then that'll leave us maybe 20 or 25 minutes for discussion, questions, and dialogue. So while I've been giving that introduction, Kirsten, do you know if Monica has joined? I don't see her on my lineup, but maybe I need to scroll a little bit to see who else is here.
She still has the same challenge, and we're helping with the link.
Okay.
Yeah, so possibly, so it could be that I start.
Why
and
don't
then,
why don't we shift the order, and hopefully Monica will be able to get that connection.
Yes, yeah.
Perfect.
Sorry. I really apologize tremendously.
Your arrival has been breathlessly awaited, Monica. So so delighted to have you here. Are you ready to launch into your set of remarks?
Thank you so much.
We'll turn it over to you now, Monica. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It is a great honor and pleasure for me to be here in this session of the Middle East and North Africa Housing Forum. Habitat for Humanity has initiated these forums in all regions, and they are becoming instrumental as voices and actors for the inclusion and transformation of informal settlements and slums as a tangible and practical aspect of sustainable development. And given the relative success of this region and the experience in transforming and including informal settlements, we are going to be looking to you to play a key role in advocating for actions that you have found to work, so that we can globally and significantly accelerate for the 2030 target on upgrading slums and making human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. Creating and managing better places to live is key to achieving the ambitions of the new urban agenda and Agenda 2030. And without a sharp focus on creating and managing better places to live, we will not address any of the ambitions that we have expressed in these agendas. We will not be able to address poverty, we will not be able to address inequality, nor economic growth and jobs, nor gender equality or food security or access to clean water and sanitation, even education, healthcare, climate change adaptation, are all things that can be accessed and achieved through the upgrading of informal settlements. We in South Africa, through our National Development Plan and our Integrated Urban Development Framework, we all refer to the transformation of the national space economy, the improvement of human settlements, and improved practices to upgrade and better govern informal settlements. The principles and directions that is contained in the new urban agenda have been incorporated in South Africa's medium-term strategy in priority number 5 on spatial integration, human settlements, and local government. This approach has assisted in ensuring improved implementation, including through a dedicated informal settlements upgrading grant, with a focus on spatial justice and improved neighborhoods through infrastructure-led and community-negotiated approaches. We have also allocated about 136 spaces throughout the country for development, of which 70% are in metropolitan areas, and this provides an opportunity for the implementation of urban innovation. The identification of these areas was informed by the alignment of economic development, transport, and human settlements. And so far, we have managed to conceptualize and implement some of these areas with the necessary infrastructure. There has been a dedicated focus to ensuring a shift away from merely providing housing to ensuring that we achieve livable neighborhoods. Recently, in June 2022, during the World Urban Forum, there were initial discussions that took place on visioning a global action plan framework for slums and informal settlements. And a commitment was made to launch such a framework in October 2022. And in in October, during Urban October, we actually were able to, with the assistance of UN Habitat and the support of many of the partners, including Habitat for Humanity, the Cities Alliance, and ministers and mayors and activists and researchers and practitioners from Africa and from other parts of the world and South Africa, who have been participating in projects and programs for the transformation of informal settlements, managed to agree on the key aspects and the key actions that would be needed in order to accelerate action for us to improve on the currently lacking target under the SDGs with regard to the upgrading of slums. The launch delved into issues that must be addressed for scaling up interventions. We embraced lessons that have been learned. We embraced research outcomes, and we embraced the experiences of practitioners to shape an emerging plan. And we agreed that in order to be able to do anything on the scale that we are envisaging, we would need a new multi-level and multi-sector partnership that includes the area of planning, that includes financing, that focuses on implementation, scaling up, and maintaining the quality of life improvements. The proposed actions were encapsulated in a communique, and we also talked through some of the institutional arrangements that would be needed for the proposed Global Action Plan framework to be tabled at the upcoming UN Habitat Assembly in 2023, so that it may be endorsed at a global level. The Global Action Plan framework, which will be discussed with you in some detail in the next segment, is a guiding framework for engaging nationally, internationally, locally on strategies that transform lives for the urban poor. It is a call to give a long-term vision and a medium and short-term roadmap for scaling the transformation of informal settlements and slums. And it provides the impetus for the adoption and localization at national and city levels. We are pursuing an inclusive, multi-level approach with both horizontal and vertical partnerships assembled around one vision, which is to upgrade and transform informal settlements at a local level. So I'd like to really thank you for putting together this segment in the Housing Forum, and hopefully we will be able to draw on your experiences and your help in advocating for this at a global level. Thanks so much.
Monica, thank you so much for setting the stage and giving us that very helpful context for this really important progress that is being made on the Global Action Plan, and obviously the contributions that you personally and your colleagues in the Department of Human Settlements in South Africa have been indispensable to moving this forward. So thank you for that. Look forward to your subsequent interventions during the course of our call in a little while. I do want to just convey a note to Salma. Oh, yes, you do know the sharing is now activated. So when it comes to your section of the program, please do share those slides. So before we get to Salma, though, we'll turn now to Kirsten Sommer from UN Habitat, and she's really been the point person driving the details and all the hard work of lots of actors engaged in this for the last 5 or 6 months. So Kirsten, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can see my screen. I'm just sharing. Yes, it seems to have confirmed to me. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you very much for this opportunity to be part of this important forum. I had the opportunity also this morning to listen in, and it's really exciting to follow the discussions, and very much linking also to already solutions to this global discussion. we had, and particular big thank you to Habitat for Humanity. And yeah, been really a key player also during the Habitat 3 process with the policy paper and Informal Settlement paper. And it's a pleasure to, together with the policy leadership and yeah, government championship of South Africa, to keep the momentum going of the new urban agenda and looking at how this can be implemented in the context of the 8 years that are still there until 2030 for the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals. It seems a bit slow on the sharing. Yeah, so I would like to first present you generally the context, the global context, and then go a bit more in depth how the global action plan is structured, and then also can be applied at different governance levels, as already also mentioned in the introduction of the other speakers. So yeah, the global challenge we are aware of. So we have 1 billion people. It's an enormous number today, and the growth is to continue. And yeah, and we see that 2050, we will have 3 billion slum dwellers in total and 183,000 people joining informal settlements and slums every day. And just, I think every session I could follow here and there had the reference to scaling and also looking at the description of your program. So this importance of meeting the scale while keeping local context at hand, and also yeah, people and scaling the challenge that was described as really also the key, let's say, purpose of this action plan, to bring those elements together and move forward. And then, as mentioned already, that also the target is lacking behind. So during the Dubai Expo, we had the opportunity to get together as core partners and start a journey where we first said it was important to have a multiple partnership approach, because the scale requires new thinking.
And if I could ask folks who are participating and attending the call to mute your microphones, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. So yeah, one key first step was this can't be done alone. So we have invited other partners, and in that discussion also during the Dubai Expo, we got together with the partners here also. We presented in the logo. So very powerful partnership, and we're really grateful for this. And we have, yeah, now already for quite a while had monthly meetings and very intense coordination with a task force that is very committed, and also linking to other task forces like the Informality Task Force headed by Cities Alliance and the Community of Practice by the Lincoln Institute. So it's a really great pleasure to see how this has evolved. And now we're at the last 3 steps until June, as Monica was referring to. So we will have this importance of providing knowledge and the global publication process, which also is really carried by those core partners here listed. And then the implementation angle to localize what we learn, what we have in data and knowledge and solutions at hand. And of course, in that learning process, also bring the localized solutions to the global level, and then come to a global action plan framework that we would like to then launch in June next year. So yeah, these are really the key strategic steps we're looking at. And the global action plan, let's say, as already also described, is a core piece bringing the different steps we would like to take to really top up commitments and make a significant contribution towards the acceleration of the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals and the new urban agenda, and then also translating them at the different governance levels. And it's really great pleasure that my colleague is here to speak about how the region has taken up this issue and what kind of frameworks and partnerships you have at hand to move forward, and also the regional diversity, which is a challenge, and at the same time, of course, also a huge opportunity for learning and bringing diverse solutions to regional and global attention that then can inform and also accelerate the implementation in other contexts. So then very importantly, also the change on the ground that we would like to drive for, support with in this coordination with the different partners, with a different entry point each partner brings on board, and then with the different governance levels in the sense of the global change of thinking and advocacy and commitments, and also financing frameworks that are at hand, and then the regional and local implementation. Here we see the timeline, and yeah, in October we launched it in South Africa, and we're going towards June. The overall vision we felt was to create the city for all, leaving no one and no place behind. So really to come with that ambition of, and that's why we're also speaking here about transformation, to come with this long-term vision of creating a just city, a city that is a home for everyone. And yeah, mentioned already the SDG and New Urban Agenda linkage, and of course the language comes from both. But it's also about looking of how can we transform the sort of negative exclusion, inequalities, poverty challenge we have at hand, and turn them around and provide a process that does so, and that enables diversity and really makes the decade of action go live. So this global action plan provides overarching vision, principles, and different dimensions, 4 dimensions. I will briefly speak to them, and global actions. And the goal is really to enable, to have this framework to orientate then regional and also national frameworks for implementation. So that's almost like a menu to pick from and a checklist to see, are we on the right track in the sense of having a sustainable and inclusive approach to also, again, leverage the multiple dimensions of informality and go with an integrated and inclusive approach, this catalytic power. So here again, also the 4 dimensions, and important, of course, also the environmental dimensions, including the climate change with environmental sustainability and protection. And yeah, I think we all know the multiple effects and how much informal settlements and slums speak to almost all our sustainable development goal targets. So it's a very powerful also accelerator for countries in general, for governments to make progress in delivering those. And yeah, and here we have more also the principle application and so on, and different levels, but I need to accelerate also the presentation. So we would like to share with you. We will make that available, of course, so you can have a closer look. But what I just want to highlight here also again, the different elements that are as accelerators in the framework are again also designed in a way that they inform the global level with advocacy and coordination, capacity building, knowledge, policy and demonstration, but also are really something to directly translate into a national implementation framework where accountability can be driven, and an orientation and structure can be found. Hear more about the principles, maybe just going to the key actions. And so one of the key action is the reduction of spatial inequality and creating spatial justice. And here we have 3 key instruments of doing so: the integrated urban territorial management, strategic planning, and then a really holistic package. I think we heard that also quite a lot, so that we go beyond just providing a house to have an affordable, habitable, accessible housing solution with service and infrastructure integrated. And here we have further details, which again will be available to you to look at how it is for now translated down. And it's again in the process of revision with a global publication as well, and will be very detailed in the implementation framework that we would like to launch during the UN Habitat Assembly. Then another important driver here is social inclusion and integrated governance, where we have also 3 vehicles: the multiple stakeholder governance, inclusive participation, and then also monitoring for evidence-based interventions to have a strong framework, plus the promotion of participatory approaches, which was the first point. And then the poverty and economic prosperity, that should really be always, like, also again to address poverty, to have the socioeconomic empowerment and development at heart of all what we're doing, plus also financing instruments that allow for equitable investments and also different partners to blend together to have a sustainable and yeah, also innovative solutions implemented, adapted to what is needed. Again, we have the subpoints here as well, which are for your information and also in the document. And then the last one on the environmental sustainability and protection, where it's about promoting circular economies and sustainable construction patterns and resilience building and risk management, with, of course, also climate resilience as one of the key drivers within the resilience envelope. So the last part, which is, yeah, I think also the very important one, is this partnership framework, because we would like to continue, yeah, really translating this global partnership, core partnership framework to also the different contexts. And that's also a bit why we're so glad to be part of this forum, and hopefully also engage with the content of this forum afterwards, and through Habitat for Humanity also reach out to different partners that have come to this important forum with interesting aspects and go maybe deeper, because we would like to set these targets that we want at global, regional, country level, as in the sense of having an accountability framework with partners together, and translate them really in practical, practical commitments by different partners. What can be done now in a coordinated manner, and how can we complement each other? And then again, also align the actions that are happening at country, regional, global level to really leverage the also tight resources and this important agenda, in the sense of the urge to act and the little time left. So also in the discussion, South Africa was very interesting. Governments concluded that it would be, and I think that's a very good recommendation, to see the next 8 years really as a foundation for addressing the whole scale, to make really an end to that marginalization, as we say in the vision. So to see what kind of targets do we need to demonstrate in the next 8 years, and build a foundation to engage at larger scale. And then also with that, and until 2050, the trend that we're seeing both in the growth coming up and the current situation within our cities. And and then there are the different instruments of strategies and different guiding documents, guidelines, and also the creation of learning and knowledge exchange, again, as already mentioned, at the different levels, the creation of knowledge hubs. But then also we would really love to invite countries, to governments, national governments, to provide us with a status quo report, that we have a baseline, and then from there can also work together at through the different entry points that are there, also to develop the country level partnership frameworks, and then look at how we accelerate it together, and also inform joint programming with partners, and invite other partners to come in, particularly, of course, also financing partners, to make that difference. And we're quite glad that we have the opportunity to jointly do so in a number of countries. And for example, also in Kenya with the EU delegation, where all partners are on board and will have a role to play. So where we can really show also the power of multiple partners, and then implementing an inclusive and sustainable approach. So ideally, would really want to see during the Habitat Assembly like 10 countries that are presenting their vision of localization, their partnership set up to inspire the 8 years to come, and then move forward with a very powerful entry point for finance and vision. So that's what I would like to share for today, and thank you so much.
Kirsten, thank you so much for that very thorough and concise description of a very big initiative. Obviously, it needs to be big given the scale of the need and the condition that we're trying to address. So a lot of very exciting elements. I trust that all of the folks that participating in this session could see themselves, or a role potentially for themselves in this, because it really will be a collective effort on all of our parts in order to achieve the outcomes that we all want to achieve. As you mentioned, Kirsten, we do have, it is very important for there to be a country level perspectives. And Salma Yousri, I'm so glad you're here to provide a perspective from your engagement with the systems and the colleagues that you work with here in Egypt. So I'll turn it over to you, and look forward to your remarks and comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stephen, and thank you for inviting us. It's really an interesting forum. I've been there in person for the last 2 days, and we were very happy to see all the dialogues, and I'm very happy to see the word trust and partnership coming out in each and every session. And I also thank Kirsten for giving the opportunity to really shed light on how we took the global action framework to the local and regional levels. And I'll go quickly through the presentation because I know that the most exciting time in the session is the questions and answers. So I'll just run quickly through the program. So what I'm presenting today is the regional program, which is towards Arab cities without informal areas. And this is really guided by the UN Habitat's vision on how to address informality and how to address such an immense challenge. So very quickly, for those who are not very familiar with the Arab region, we have more than 80 million people living in informal settlements in the region. 18% of the population lives below the country's national poverty lines. Of course, a lot of variation also in the countries, very different status of various countries between the Gulf and other poor countries. But there's also a problem with unemployment. So there's around 14.3 million people that are unemployed in the region, despite the very high level of youth in the region. And of course, we cannot talk about the Arab region without mentioning refugees and displacement and the huge percentage of people that are refugees within the region. And of course, also the challenges relating to climate, for example, the lack of adequate fresh water in the region. So in 2019, we tried to look at informality in the region. And I think Kristen's job is much more challenging because she's trying to look at it globally. We already found it very challenging at the regional level. The definitions, the data, the information in each and every country is different. But we tried to, research that, and we came to a specific description of areas. So you cannot have a unified data that will tell you a clear number of informality in the region, but you'll find that there are some common characteristics: high density, poverty, the vulnerability of women, climate change impacts that are really multiplied, and then, of course, migration and displacement. And when COVID happened, that also added another layer of vulnerability, and we found that the people living in poor and vulnerable conditions were the ones that were affected the most because they already have weaker safety networks and their socioeconomics is already very vulnerable. So the COVID response and the general UN Habitat's approach is really figuring out that urbanization and development are interlinked. So whenever we find a big challenge, we can say that urbanization can be leveraged for the fight against poverty, inequality, unemployment, climate change, and other pressing global challenges. That's what Ms. Maimouna, the executive director, always say. So I think COVID and other challenges, the crises that were in the region, can really be tackled if urbanization is well planned and is well managed. We worked together very closely with the ISDB, the Islamic Development Bank, and we looked at the responses and the global framework that UN Habitat Strategic Plan and ISDB also urban policy. We supported the creation of the policy, and we worked together to see how can we together support the informality in the region. It's a nice story. There were a number of milestones that happened, and we started with the data and analysis. And as I said, it was a very difficult task because we figured out that it's very different across the region. We then had a workshop in late 2019 here in Egypt to validate and cross-link and understand what does these numbers reflect in the different contexts. And based on this, we issued a report on informality in the region, and that was the beginning of this program towards Arab cities without informal settlements. In WOF 2020, we launched the program. We called for cities to join the program. And before that, we came with some key observations and findings from the report that looks at informality in the region. And very quickly, again, we can share the presentation, but very, very quick messages that can really frame the discussion is that people or slum dwellers really seek job opportunities. It's not only about housing. So again, like we said yesterday and the day before, it's not the roof. It's the livelihood, it's the job opportunities. And that's why to address informality and to address the lack of housing, we really need to look at an integrated approach that does not only look at the roof, but also addresses livelihood, services, economic opportunities, and others. Another thing is that the role of the different stakeholders, and namely the private sector, needs to be highlighted, and I'll come back to this later in the presentation. And that also definitely relates not only to funding, but to also inclusion and participation and accountability. Of course, decentralization, and I echo Kirsten when she says we really need to have tools and methodologies and frameworks at the global, regional, and national levels, but decentralized actions and specific context-specific actions for various communities, because each community would definitely know its requirements the most. Again, participation, very much related, and flexibility. We also identified key cross-cutting elements that we needed to have in mind when we talk about informality and addressing informality, and that was environment, migration, finance, gender, and participation. So the approach started when we looked at the scale of the problem, and again yesterday it came very quickly, very strongly, the replication and the possibility for working at scale. And for example, when we looked at Egypt, 37% of the population was named unplanned or informal, and we came to the conclusion that no matter how much resources we have, we will not be able to address this amount. So we needed to really shift from an approach that looks at the challenge to one that looks at the city. And this is where we started to look at the citywide integrated approach. We started to look at the resources of the participatory slum urban upgrading, our global program. And we started to see how can we link the city potentials to the city opportunities. So if we cannot provide external finance and external resources to the city, and if we really know that many places in our cities are not well used and are not optimized, then the framework would look into how to link these together, how to link the opportunities, invest in the opportunities, and then cross-finance the challenges. And this is where all the thinking started. We also worked very closely with the City Investment Facility, the SDG cities, to make sure that when we put this framework, we are not only trying to solve the issue of informality, but we're also accelerating as many SDGs as possible. We're providing a framework for different investment and blended finance mechanisms so that everybody can contribute to the social, economic, and environmental sustainability of the city within a clear framework that puts phases of development, identifies priority projects that have a citywide impact, and also that has a cross-financing potential. We made the call in 2020. We called for cities, Arab cities, to join the program. We received more than 30 applications, and we had a very clear criteria for the first phase of the cities to join. And 12 cities were selected from Egypt, Lebanon, Saudi Arabia, Iraq, and Yemen. We worked very closely, and that was the challenging time of COVID. We worked very closely with the cities, but physically very far away. But we worked together in looking how can the program and the approach that was identified in Egypt and that came out of so many studies in Egypt, how can we take this to the regional level? And we worked with the cities on how can we apply the citywide urban upgrading approach. We were very happy that the results were very promising, and in 2020 we had actually in 2021 we had the Building Back Better workshop also in Egypt, where the different cities presented their plans, and more importantly where private sector was brought on board and different stakeholders were brought on board so that they define the role at the stake. We had more than 19 projects that brings more than 70,000 job opportunities in the region, and with investments up to 2 billion USD. So my final slides are approaching, and we're very happy that we're also taking the cooperation with the Islamic Development back to the second phase, where we're working on specifically possibly 4 cities in the region from the 12 cities. The first one is Dahab in Egypt, and the second phase of cooperation will now focus on implementation, analysis of the feasibility and implementation of some of these pilot interventions that will really aims to support a more sustainable and feasible citywide approach puts down the feasibility analysis and also the SDG accelerating elements to implement interventions that would support the hub city, not only to reduce any informality, but also to become more sustainable and support its vision and its interventions. So the next actions would really, again, just like Kristen said, extending partnerships, strengthening the network, supporting the development of the project and supporting their application to other cities. We're working with Taif in Saudi Arabia, in Yemen, and also with Samawa in Iraq, to keep on implementing, showcasing, and of course, monitoring evaluation for second phases of development. And this is my last slide. We have this platform, and we'd love you to join the platform. We will share the presentation where we can share resources and discussions on how can we really link this to other programs that are ongoing. So thank you very much. I'm back to you, Steve.
Salma, thank you. That was excellent. Really wonderful, new to me information, and I know it was probably new to lots of folks participating in this session as well. Very exciting developments, and one of the things I like so much of it, but just the really asset-based approach, really taking a look at not just getting overwhelmed by the challenge, but taking a look at what the opportunities are, what the assets and capacity that currently exists, what is available that we can build with and work with and can generate momentum for progress on this. So thank you for that great presentation. We've got about 18 minutes left in our allotted time, and this would be a time for us to engage in questions and commentary back from our participants. So feel free to use the chat function on Zoom here to pose a question, and if you know who you'd want to direct it to, please list them, but otherwise we'll try and field those questions appropriately. While we're waiting for all of you to pose your questions, I do have a couple of one observation and then a question. And that observation is that at Habitat for Humanity, just for all of your information, one of the things that we're doing on a global level is launching an awareness and advocacy campaign that is focused on addressing slums and settlements. So throughout the Habitat network, we were operating in 70 countries around the world. We're providing incentives and technical assistance for our country programs to mobilize their efforts and channel their efforts more concertedly and more specifically towards initiatives that will address conditions in slums and settlements. So that's in fact a kind of a contribution or another asset that hopefully we can bring to the table to fuel more momentum. And it's in those countries where the local context matters so much. And I think, Kirsten, you mentioned that in your remarks, that with a global campaign, the need for local context is critical. We're hoping to collaborate with many other partners with our country offices that sign on and commit to an effort, a campaign, multi-year campaign to focus more of their capacity and energies towards informal settlement upgrading and transformation, as Ms. Maimouna has emphasized. So I do one question that I have. So that was my one comment and question, and I want to go back to Kirsten's point, looking for, I think, 10 in time for the Habitat Assembly. Where the goal or the target is to identify 10 countries that have kind of signed on, and I suspect, Monica, that one of those countries hopefully will be South Africa. Can you talk a little bit, Kirsten, about what's involved in that, and maybe Salma, you have a sense of that, but talk about what are you trying to accomplish, and what do those 10 countries have to do in order to kind of sign on in advance of the Habitat Assembly? Hopefully it'll be more than 10, but what's involved in that? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. No, it's signing, first of all, I mean, for the support at the global level with our global champion, Government of South Africa, we want everyone to sign off. But then we want to translate this global framework into action in 10 countries, and we want to have diversity from the different regions. And what we really want there is that countries before the Habitat Assembly reflect and come up with a vision for the next 8 years of what they can do to bring this issue to scale and create that foundation that I was talking about, and then using the different ingredients from mainstreaming maybe certain principles stronger than others, that really doing a bit of a reflection and analysis. Many countries are doing something already, but there's something lacking, we see, that takes off the scale that we need. So it's to do that reflection and then engage with us as partners. And I think it would be, really like a bit of an assessment plus a strategizing exercise, plus then also mobilization of partners around the different pillars that then have been identified as to be strengthened and empowered in the 8 years to come, the package that is needed. And then come in with whatever contribution it is. You were just mentioning your campaign. It could be to say, okay, let's focus on those countries that have now really given that, sign-in and effort to make a systematic change really at all levels, embrace this. And then that would be great, that every partner can just bring in what they have to offer, in addition to, of course, also promoting certain solutions and looking to also expanding beyond, let's say, the June. But that would be great if we can celebrate that and have also financing partners that would want to go that path with us. And I would also say South Africa. There are some countries we have already lightly on board, and with the strong partnership we have, that's great. But it is, I think to also show that it's not just a document we endorsed, and so that we can also make sure we have something to report, and also can show again what I think is really important, how also different partners can complement, and at the same time different entry points, and civil society and local government can work hand in hand with national government and the different plugins there are. So really showing an integrated partnership approach in those countries. That would be the dream, and maybe we can do more than 10.
No, I think 10 would be great, and more would be even better. And I certainly had that thought of aligning up our country offices with the 10, and hopefully there will be perfect overlap, that all 10 of those countries will be countries where our country offices will have campaigns. And Monica, in terms of South Africa, do you have a sense of, between now and June, what more? I mean, you guys have been real leaders in this for a long time. What do you anticipate doing between now and June in advance of the Habitat Assembly?
Well, I think that firstly, the beauty of the Global Action Plan framework is that it is also a tool to keep the conversation going, and to sort of delve deeper and deeper and deeper into what needs to happen. So in the identification of commitments, in the identification of things that already work that we want to do more of, we're bringing more and more people into the conversation nationally. So it's really of benefit to us to say, informal settlements upgrading and transformation is really difficult. I don't think anybody should be under any illusion that, it's just this one thing that we would need to do, and then it would be perfect and we could, solve all the problems. It's really intensive. And it requires multiple entry points, it requires multiple actors, it requires a philosophy of change to be embraced by many different actors. So there's a lot of talking, a lot of engagement, a lot of listening that needs to happen at a national conversation. And so what we're planning is a series of stakeholder engagements through sort of a grassroots platform, to allow that listening and talking conversation to take place, and to document that and to institutionalize it as a way in which problems get solved. So that's number one locally. So hopefully we will also be able to document some of the things that have worked really well, certain case studies, and take that to the Habitat Assembly as one of the 10 countries, and then sign up on the commitment. And also, we think that we want to lead a process for the Habitat Assembly to really take this issue of transforming informal settlements to the next level. So our ambition is a resolution that will be adopted by member states at the Habitat Assembly that endorses the Global Action Plan and the 10 actions that it includes. And so for that process, we are going to be embarking on a regional conversation with Southern African countries and seeing what we can agree on and how we can become allies in advocating for this as an important resolution to be adopted, as well as talking to the diplomats in Nairobi who are driving the preparations for the Habitat Assembly, and finding a way in which this language that we use and that we're very comfortable with also lands well with them, and that it becomes something that UN Habitat can programmatize also. So we're trying various entry points. We're trying to really get some momentum going. And what we're hoping for is that you, the partners from the Middle East and North African region, will make an input from your perspective, because as I said, I feel that this region has been relatively successful in comparison to even to South Africa. So there's lots of gold that we can mine, and lots of inputs that we can gather, and lots of examples that we could show that really give traction to this idea that with transforming and including informal settlements into the urban spaces, we can achieve so much of our ambitions in the global agenda of the new urban agenda, and also the Sustainable Development Goals, not just the SDG 11, but many of the other ones. And so this is what we're trying to demonstrate. This is what we're trying to get into the global consciousness, so to speak, is that this is an entry point that is vital.
Excellent. Monica, thank you for that. Very exciting, and be great to enlist many other partners in this process, your peers in countries around the world, especially here in the MENA region. I've seen a few folks come off, turn their cameras on, or perhaps come off mute. Are there any questions that folks have for any of the presenters here? Please take yourself off mute, activate your camera, and feel free to weigh in. And while we're waiting, I also want to thank the services, thank the interpreters who have been translating our comments and presentations here today. Sarah, I see your name popping up on my screen. Do you have a comment or question to offer? Okay, we'll continue to wait. Feel free to use the chat function as well if you want to pose a question. I do want to pose a question of my own to Salma. Again, we have a few minutes left, but in your remarks, and would love to get both of your presentation decks, Kirsten and Salma. Those were terrific. It looks like you're really taking a real regional strategy to your initiatives. How have you found what obstacles have you overcome in order to kind of make the connections and build the momentum with multiple countries in the region to work in a kind of a concerted regional way? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So I think what was interesting in this program is that we figured out early on that some things cannot be generalized. So we made the very conscious decision that the approaches and the tools needs to be like the main direction that drives the change and the concepts that drive the change. But when it gets to details, we would have to follow the lead of our local representatives. And we've worked very closely with our local offices and the people from the local authorities to make sure that we're not over guiding them in their processes, because in the end, you know, it's just as Monica correctly said, there's no one solution and we cannot enforce the thinking. We just want to help different stakeholders, you know, proceed with their plans and advance SDGs as they do that. So what happened is that we had the detailed study in Egypt with all the different indicators that will identify urban development areas. And we were able to successfully shift the Egyptian law from identifying unplanned, informal, unsafe areas to a general note of urban development areas that we will intervene in, so that we're moving away from the challenge to, as we said, both the challenges and the opportunities. And when we try to do the same with the different Arab regions, we did not impose those indicators. So we said, listen, in the Egyptian context, we identified historical areas and investment areas, Nile front areas as such, but feel free to do so in your context differently. So we gave them the chance to identify their own categories of urban development areas in their own context. So we say, for example, challenging areas in Egypt are areas that lack water and sanitation, basic services, social interventions, schools, and others. What is it in your context? And we did not dig deep in this. We let them do it the way they want to do it, because their own culture and their own context is the ones that avail this. And I think this is very useful when we will talk about guiding frameworks and then how implementation on the ground will take place. And it was a very interesting change where we moved from the very detailed identification in Egypt to the more flexible identification at the regional level.
That's a really wise, very wise comment, and that level of agility, that flexibility, the adaptability, I think, is critical for a complex initiative like this. So thank you. I've seen a couple. We just have a minute or two before we have to sign off. Actually, the link that we're on becomes the link for the next session. It's the magic and madness of Zoom. But are there any comments? I've seen Jawad. I've seen your. I thought I saw you come off mute for a moment there. Anyone else? Do you have a question, or others before we conclude?
We must have been very, very clear, Stephen. Huh?
You've answered every possible question. It's brilliant. Well, I do want to thank you all for putting this session together. It is obviously early in the process, so there will be lots more content, lots more opportunities to pay attention to this. I guess maybe, Kirsten, to close with you, is there a website or an address, a link that folks should be adding to their list of favorites so that they can keep track of the progress that this important initiative is making?
Yes, there is, and it will be expanded now. So just thinking those statements here and quotes we should actually integrate, and also the government of South Africa has it on their website as well, the launch event and so on. So there are certain key links, maybe bring them all together. And yeah, I don't know, we can see what is the best, but one thing is I could add them on the last slide of the presentation for now, and then they can be found there. Yeah,
that'd be great, and we'll make all these materials available to folks who participated in our session virtually, and to everybody else who's participated in the Middle East North Africa Housing Forum this week. We really appreciate all of you guys, Monica, Kirsten, Salma, and all of you joining virtually. Also behind the scenes, thanks to our interpreters and to Ana Carolina Gomez for facilitating this session. We wish you a very pleasant rest of the day and look forward to partnering with you in months and years to come. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.